All right, guys, you are my victim, so I'm going to mute you all, and I'm going to start the presentation. And I hope it's informative. And if you have any questions, um, if you look at the bottom of your screen, you can, I believe you can raise your hand, and if I can figure out how to see them, then I'll be happy to answer your questions. If not, at the end, I'll unmute you, and you can ask me questions then. So all in all, this should probably take about an hour, and then we can, then if you have questions, we can address them at the end. So I'm going to mute you all, which I did. So as you can see, that's my name, Sam Kandel. I'm the Regional Director of the Mid-Hudson Small Business Development Center. We serve 7 counties in the Mid-Hudson region, providing free one-on-one business counseling. I'm also a business advisor, and I've been with the program for almost 21 years now. In July, it will be 21 years. So I've worked with a lot of different types of businesses. The focus of this this series of presentations is going to be the food business. But tonight I'm just basically going to cover the fundamentals of putting a business plan together, because regardless of what kind of business you have, it's a great idea to have a business plan. And if you ever wanted to start a business and borrow money from a bank, or whether you wanted to attract investors, then you have to have a business plan. So it's work that is very worthwhile. So tonight our program is being hosted by the Newburgh Free Library. The SBA is under the Small Business Development Centers are under the umbrella of the Small Business Administration, and they're a sponsor, and also the city of Newburgh. And let's see if we get to the next screen. There we go. So some of the things we're going to discuss tonight are going to be all about the New York State Small Business Development Center, so you know more about the program. A little bit about what it means to be an entrepreneur, because by virtue of the fact that you're a small business owner, you're an entrepreneur because you're taking a risk. We'll talk a little bit about the options for business structures. I'll go through the steps to put a business plan together. We'll talk a little about rules and regulations. One of the subsequent meetings will be by the health department here. It's going to tell you a lot about rules and regulations for food businesses. There's different ways to fund a business, which we'll talk about briefly, and then I'll talk about the most important thing with any business is how to deal with numbers. So the Small Business Development Centers were started in 1984. There are small business development centers in every state of the union. There are actually now there's only 22 regional centers in New York State, and there's approximately 200 counselors and staff altogether in the whole state. It's funded by the federal government through the Small Business Administration, through Congress votes our budget every year, and then there's also a state match and any other place where we can raise money. So we have many different sources of funding, but most of it is federal, and most of it comes from taxpayer dollars because it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Since small business is the engine that drives our economy and creates the most jobs, if we help small businesses succeed, then we're also creating taxpayers. Hopefully pay your taxes, or I'll be out of a job. Most of the counselors, at least when my crop of people who started working here 20 years ago, most of us are former business owners, which I am. Had my own business for 20 plus years, and I've also worked with a bunch of other startups before I started working with the SBDC. So we all have entrepreneurial backgrounds. Most of us have made all the mistakes that we don't want you to make. So, and we've learned by our experience, and we can transfer that knowledge to our clients. Most of the centers are hosted by the state university. My main office for my region is in Kingston at Ulster Community College. And most of the other centers are hosted by state university campuses, with the exception of a couple of centers in New York City. So we provide free one-on-one counseling. Everybody likes to get things for free. Just because we're free doesn't mean that we don't do a good job. We do a great job, and we also provide a great service. So, we've had clients, or I've personally had clients for 20 years. I actually heard from my first client during COVID, and who I ever had, and that was 20 years ago. And we also have clients for 10 minutes who just need a small bit of information. So we don't cherry pick who we talk to. We just want to help everybody. So this is a little bit outdated. I would say that I don't know how many billions of dollars we've helped people inject into the New York economy. It's more than $500 million. Now it's probably close to a total of $1 billion. And my center has probably helped people raise almost $900 million over the past 20, 30 plus years. So that's a lot of money and a lot of businesses. Not everyone succeeds. Some people have not succeeded. We do our best to give people enough information so that they have a better opportunity to be successful. But the statistics kick in on occasion. So not everybody makes it past the first 5 years. We also have a research facility in our state office. So if you need to put a business plan together and you've done some research on your own using Google or some other search opportunity, or a great library like the Newburgh Free Library, and you get stuck, we have research librarians in our state office who always provide great information. And over the past 20 plus years, I've never been able to stump them. So we have access to a lot of information that is not sometimes readily available. So that's the SBDC. That's what we're all about. So again, we create jobs and taxpayers. That's why we're funded, and that's why we're free. And now we go into why you would put a business plan. So first of all, you have to have a goal. You have to know where you want to go. The reason you put a plan together is to reach a particular goal. Some people have come to my office and said, well, I only want to work for 6 months out of the year, and I want to spend the other 6 months in the Caribbean. And I said, well, that's a plan. I said, if you can plan a business that provides you with enough opportunity to do that, then that's what's in your business plan. So as silly as it sounds, if you put a plan together that you could do that, then God love you. I'll invite me during one of those 6 months. So after you have a goal, you have to decide how you're going to get there. And that's the whole purpose of putting a business plan together, is to give you a roadmap of how to get to that goal, at least in terms of business. So to start a business, you have to have the means, which means you have to have money. There are very few businesses that you can start where you don't need some sort of funding, whether it's your money or borrowing money or from investors. You have to have the means to start the business. Again, you have to have the path, which is your plan, in order to get there. And you have to, don't know whether you can see this, so I'll just move it. You also have to know what the end result is going to be. What are you looking to do? Do you have an exit strategy? Do you want to have a business for 5 years and sell it? Do you want to work for the rest of your life? Do you want to work and leave your business to your children? So these are all decisions that you make on the process of putting a plan together. So if you are a small business owner, new or aspiring, by definition, you're an entrepreneur. And if you're fortunate or unfortunate enough to have an aha moment and you want to move ahead with your idea, then you're probably, if you decide to move ahead, then you're probably a risk taker to some degree, because starting a business is a risky endeavor. In order to be successful, you have to be disciplined and you have to be hardworking. You can't be lazy when you start a business. A good example of that is, let's say that you're a plumber and you've been working for somebody else for the rest of for the beginning of your career. So when you start your own business, you still have to do the work. You're still a plumber, and then you also have to run a business. So you have to be hardworking because you have 2 jobs now instead of 1, and you have to be willing to put that effort in. You have to be flexible because you never know what's going to happen tomorrow, and you have to adapt to whatever those changes are. And you have to be as knowledgeable as possible about the business that you're getting into, because there's no substitute for knowledge. So if you're getting into a business that you know nothing about, if you're taking these series of classes to determine whether you want to be in the food business or not, then this is a good start. And there's lots of other avenues to educate yourself to determine whether you want to move ahead or not. Financial literacy is very important. Most of the people who come to me putting business plans together who've already done one, they hand it to me and I say, where are the numbers? Because businesses succeed and fail on numbers. So ultimately you have to become comfortable with the discipline of accounting to a degree, and understanding the interplay of the numbers and how your business works financially. It's very important. It's the most important thing, frankly. You have to plan, usually beyond tomorrow, whether it's a month or 6 months or a year or 5 years, depending on the kind of plan that you have. If you want to start a restaurant and open up 100 franchises across the country, then that has more of a planning window than opening up a corner deli and being happy with that for the next however many years. It's not a bad idea to have connections. To who you know is an important part of starting a business. Again, we talked about an exit strategy. Do you want to work for 5 years, 50 years, 5 minutes, one way or the other? It's not a bad idea to have a goal in terms of an exit strategy. And most importantly, be willing to ask questions. Nobody knows everything, even though some people think they know everything. And you have to be able to delegate responsibility as your business grows, because ultimately you're not going to be able to do everything. So those are important things to know about being an entrepreneur and starting a business. So if you're standing at the edge of the cliff, you've got a lot to think about. Any questions, you can raise your hand now, because I'm going to pause and get my water, which is right over here. Cheers. You guys can't see that. It's not wine, it's just water. Wine is later. So these are reasons business failed. I don't know whether this statistic is still accurate. It's close to being accurate, but 50% of all small business startups fail within the first 5 years. Why? There's reasons. These are things you should consider. Crowded market space. You open up, well, we're talking about the food business. You open up a restaurant where there's 20 other restaurants on the same corner, and there's just a limited number of people who can eat out every night. So that would be a crowded market space. And that would help you determine, an ultimate location for your business. Lack of experience. You have to know something about the business that you're getting into, and depending on what you want to do, I've heard it 100 times. My grandmother made great meatballs. I want to open up an Italian restaurant. Well, there's a big difference between making good meatballs and having the experience to run a restaurant. They're 2 separate things. Well, they're 2 separate things. So if you don't know how to do something and you want to start a business of your own that involves that, go get a job in that industry, learn the ropes, and then go out and start your own business. Costing and pricing mistakes has to do with knowing what you're buying and what you're selling it for and making sure you're making an appropriate profit. Running out of money, insufficient cash flow, that can be poor planning at the beginning because you're not going to break even right away. It's not having enough money in the bank when you open the doors, or it could be just having an inefficient operation that's eating up more cash than is generated. Having too much debt, that can bury a business. You borrow too much money and you can't afford to pay it back, or most of your cash flow is going to pay it back and you can't pay your bills. Dysfunctional management, people who fight, brawls on the kitchen floor are definitely not a good indication that people are getting along. If you watch any of these television shows like Restaurant Impossible on TV or whatever, and you see the people fighting and everybody in the dining room is looking around, that's really not a formula for success. So I would put that under the category of dysfunctional management. So choose your employees wisely. And if you don't get along with your spouse, don't go into business together because it's not going to be a good combination. Or marketing plan. Marketing is really important. Marketing is the most important function a business has because that's how you get customers and you keep customers. So if you don't have a marketing plan at all, you're either losing an opportunity to make more money, or you not making enough money altogether because people aren't coming through the door. Poor accounting. A shoebox full of receipts really doesn't do it when you're running a business. You have to have some means to track your activities. Certainly, a lot of people these days use QuickBooks to manage their businesses. But if you don't enter the data into QuickBooks, or if you don't have a good system that automatically enters in your sales and your bill paying into the system, then you can't keep track of the numbers. So you don't know whether you're making money, losing money, whether you're running out of money, or whether you're rich. You might be rich and not even know it. So keeping track of your finances is really important. So if you don't, again, we talked about delegation. If you're not good at it, have somebody else be in charge of your bookkeeping and accounting, and then have them show you the reports periodically so that you know what's going on in the business. Shoddy work, certainly, or bad attitudes. People who have bad attitudes are not going to keep their customers very long. And again, failure to plan. If you don't plan beyond tomorrow, then it's an opportunity either to lose money, not to make money that you could potentially make, or to go out of business. So these are some reasons that businesses fail. These are the primary reasons that business fail. Probably I would put at the top of the list is insufficient cash flow. People run out of money. And if you open a business where we live up here in the middle of January, when everyone's hiding in their house, you're going to need more money to start your business if you do it in January than if you open it up on Memorial Day when people are out in the streets and more potential for them to come into your store. So, these are part of the things that you plan for when you're putting a business plan together. Because you don't want your business to end up here. I always think that's amusing. Nobody ever laughs. Ladies, if you're laughing on Zoom, then God love you. I appreciate it. So you have to pay attention to the numbers. I keep stressing this, but it's really the most important thing. So you have to measure it to manage it. So that's recording your numbers, which is what you're measuring when you look at your profit and loss statement or your cash flow statement or your bank statement or whatever. But if you don't put the numbers in, you have nothing to measure. You're flying by the seat of your pants. So you have to have a financial plan. You have to have the tools in order to be aware of what's going on in the finances of your business. It's good to have the budget. All of you have heard the B word, a budget, and basically a budget is something to compare actual performance to. So when you start your business, or when I work with clients, we work on doing financial projections, which is a budget of what the business is going to look like typically in the first year. And then after they've been in business for a year, very often they'll come back and we'll compare the actual results to what the budget was. Are they ever exactly the same? Typically not, but sometimes they're close. Again, monitor and adjust regularly, and again, delegate responsibility to key employees and make them accountable. Okay, make them responsible for what their jobs are. So being proactive is what you do, and whatever you do, you have to react to the results. So when you make a business decision, let's say that you decide to put a billboard on Route 32 and your business goes up 30%, then you've made a good decision. So the reaction to that is you're going to order the billboard again for another 6 months. If you spend $600 on a billboard and your business goes down 20%, you're probably not going to spend that $600 on that billboard again. So being proactive or making decisions and acting on them, and then you react to whatever the results are. When you start a business, you have to decide on a legal entity. You can be a sole proprietor, which is filing a DBA with the county clerk. You can be a partnership if there's more than two of you. If there's more than one of you, you can have a partnership with somebody. You can have a corporation. You can have an LLC, limited liability company. If you're a professional, which doesn't usually apply to people in the food business, you would be a professional limited liability company. And usually what I suggest people do is, first of all, a DBA or a general partnership does not protect you from liability. Your personal assets are at risk if you have a sole proprietorship or a partnership. If you have an S Corp or a C Corp or an LLC, then the business and the owners are separate. So that is called limited liability. Most people these days do an LLC because it's an easier business entity to administer as far as tax returns and stuff like that. All of these are pass-through entities. For small businesses, the profits pass through to the owners. The business does not pay taxes in and of itself. I could talk really fast and start from the beginning, but I'm not going to do it.
Oh, no, it's okay.
So I'll give you my card when we leave, and I can give you the PowerPoint.
PowerPoint. Okay. Yeah, you can email it to me. Okay.
So deciding what kind of legal entity is an important decision that you have to make. If there's more than one person, then I always suggest to have an attorney, because you're going to either need a partnership agreement, or for an LLC, it's called an operating agreement, and for a corporation, it's called the shareholders agreement. So you want to decide which business structure is most appropriate to you. If you have two people who have spouses with other jobs, and have different income streams, that's going to affect the kind of business entity that you ultimately decide. But it's an important decision that you have to make. And regardless of whether you're a sole proprietor, a corporation, an LLC, or a partnership, you have to have insurance. So many people say, why do I need insurance? I say, because if the FedEx guy trips on your cat and he's delivering a package to your business and he sues you, if you don't have insurance, you're going to have to sell your house to pay his medical bills. So insurance is a critical decision as well. And that's regardless of whether you're any of these different business entities. And for the most part, if there's ever a claim against your business, your insurance company is going to probably cover it unless you're grossly negligent. And if you're grossly negligent, you're going to end up in front of in a courtroom with the jury and all that, and probably deserve whatever you get. So one way or the other, either your insurance is going to protect you, or the limited liability of a corporation or an LLC is going to protect you. But both of the things go hand in hand. Once you have your business entity, you have to get an EIN number or an employer identification number. It's so that you don't have to use your social security number if you're a sole proprietor when you file your taxes, or if you're doing business with other businesses, you have a separate identification number that you can use. And that takes literally 3 minutes to get on the IRS, not Woodlot, the IRS website. I help people start LLCs and corporations. I don't charge. If it's a simple transaction, I can do it. If it gets more complicated, and I usually recommend that people contact an attorney. It's all done online these days. Corporation costs $210 with doing it at the Department of State. An LLC costs $210, but then you have to advertise in the public notices, which usually costs another $600 or $700. In the city, it's more expensive. It's about $1,200. So,
I thought it was $250
what?
to start up an LLC.
No.
Like I was looking into it
200.
recently.
Somebody's charging an extra $45.
Yeah.
I do it for nothing. It's
Well, no,
$200.
it was like the main website, so it wasn't like it wasn't like it wasn't like somebody's like service website, like they were charging extra. Like they said 200 for something, and then the $50 was to make that notice, the public notice.
Oh, it's more than $50 for the public notice.
Oh, it is?
Yes, the public notices go in the back of one daily and one weekly newspaper.
Okay.
And minimally, they're gonna be advertising, the advertising department's gonna charge $200 or something like that each. So
Oh,
that's
each.
why,
Oh, okay.
that's why it's more expensive.
Gotcha.
But then you won't have to pay your accountant to do two
Two
taxes.
taxes. Okay.
So,
Yeah. Makes sense.
but you wouldn't have to file a corporate tax. So this is an important decision that you have to make. Then you want to set up bank account for your business. If you have to collect sales tax, depending on the kind of business, if you're in the food business, you have to collect sales tax. So usually I suggest at least having 2 bank accounts. One of them is your general operating funds. The other one is your sales tax. 2 reasons. Number one, you don't want to spend that money because it's not yours. Because if you don't pay it, you're going to be in deep doo-doo. So you don't want to spend it on chicken. You want to pay it to the state every quarter.
Yeah.
So, every day, every week, every month, if you transfer it in, they take it electronically. And I never suggest having a government entity having their fingers in your general operating
Yeah,
funds.
exactly.
And then if you're going to have a payroll with a payroll service, they also are going to have access to your bank account. So I would have a 3rd bank account for your payroll.
Just the payroll itself. Okay.
So that they can't get to your general funds. And obviously they'd be linked so that you can move money back and forth. But that's what I recommend. And again, if you need a sales tax certificate of authority to collect sales tax, it's through the New York State Department of Taxation, and the application is online, and so is the payment scenario. So you have to figure out how you're going to finance your business. And either it's going to be investors or lenders. If it's just you investing your money, then you're an investor,
Okay.
even if it's just you. I don't like investors.
Oh,
Investors have their fingers in all your pies.
Okay.
So if you have an investor who invests 5% in your business to start it up, they probably think they own 90%. And you have to pay them at the end of every year out of your profits. And it can lead to contentious relationships with people because they think they can manage your company even though they have no right to do it. So I don't encourage people unless they have to have investors. I would encourage, if you have to use money from friends or family or people who would be potential investors, make it a loan instead of a permanent investment, because then when you finish paying them, they don't have any claims against your business. That's my opinion. I've certainly worked with many businesses that have investors because they have no choice.
Yeah.
Because even if you're going to be borrowing money from a bank, you have to have equity in the business. So either that's all going to come from you, or it's going to come from a group of investors. Lenders finance your business by having people deposit money in their piggy bank. That's how banks work. at least until recently when banks stopped working.
Yeah.
So the First Republic Bank, which was taken over by who took over First Republic? Who remembers? Chase. J.P. Morgan Chase took it
Yeah,
over.
yeah,
And then there was the bank out in California that went bust.
yeah,
Bust
just
with
buckled.
all of the Silicon Valley money.
Yeah, all the tech startups were using it.
So, so lenders required, number one, they require you have a business plan. So all this talking I'm doing is worthwhile because if you ever go to the bank to borrow money, you're going to have a business plan, which of course we help people put together. And lenders require that people have contribute equity to their business. The more money you bring to the table, the higher the likelihood you're going to get money from a bank. 10% is never enough. Plus, they might have a 20% requirement, but you also have to have that working capital when you open up the door. So you may need more than just whatever that percentage is. Anybody who owns 20% or more of the company is responsible for its debts. So there's never been a situation in all my almost 21 years of doing this where somebody didn't have to sign a personal guarantee. Even if you're a billionaire, they're probably going to ask you, if you're borrowing 10 million, they're probably going to ask you to put $10 million in an account in their bank as security. So you have to have money. There's no such thing as a lender lending 100% of what it costs to start a business. Being that we're talking about the food business, that's even notoriously more difficult to fund because the failure rate in restaurants is much higher than just in general for some reason.
What about service type businesses?
Example?
Like computer repair or like cell phone repair, like tech repair.
Less risky. The question was if you didn't hear whether service businesses are easier to fund than restaurants. It would depend on your experience.
Okay.
And it would depend on how much money you need to borrow.
Gotcha.
And it would also depend a lot on the local marketplace in terms of what's the potential for your kind of business to be successful in this area.
Okay.
If there were 20 other companies doing what you do,
Yeah.
and it would be a struggle for you to get market share because there were so many other people doing it, then that would be taken into consideration as well. Plus, your personal credit has to be good, and you have to have a good business plan. So, and there are lots of different avenues to borrow money, some that are willing to take more risk than others. And then if there's more risk, usually your interest rate goes through the roof. But it could be the difference between getting funding or not getting funding. Oh, a little bit more about lenders. Since we mentioned the SBA at the beginning, the Small Business Administration is not a direct lender other than a very few small microloans that they offer. They're a guarantor. So if you go into a bank, you don't ask for an SBA loan. The bank says, listen, we'd really like to fund your business, but we want to get an SBA loan guarantee, which they have two programs. They have a 504 and a 7A. The 504 is usually for real estate and big capital investments. That will be a partnership between the bank and the SBA, where the SBA takes 40% of the amount they're lending you, and the bank takes 60%. So statistically, you're probably going to get to the point where if you go out of business and the SBA pays the bank for that 40%, the bank is probably going to be made whole. Okay. But if you're buying a building, the SBA will do a 504 loan. And what they do is they make a whole bunch of those loans and then they float a bond. They put them all together. And the 7A is like a catch-all for all of their other funding programs. And that can provide a bank up to an 85% guarantee on the loan. Chances are, if your business goes bust, they're going to get paid back. So you don't really ask for an SBA loan. You would go into a bank and they would say, we'd love to help you, but we're going to use the SBA. So basically, there are fees involved. Usually, they all get rolled into the principal of the loan. So it's not like you have to write a check at the closing for all those fees. But it can be the difference between getting funded or not getting funded. So, and there's always more than one bank. If one bank says no, if you put a business plan together and all the things, all the different parts of the business plan, you can always go to another bank. So,
Do you think you would have more success with a credit union over a bank when it's doing that?
it depends on the kind of business it is. If it's hyper local,
Yeah.
the credit unions are kind of hyper local.
Yeah.
I would say there might be a little more willingness to take risk at a credit union than there is from a big bank. The big banks like Chase and Bank of America, and those are two good examples of of banks that are not small business friendly. So when you watch TV and you see the small business owners dancing through the street and money falling from the sky from Bank of America or Chase, that never happens in real life.
Yeah.
And
I
I've
think
seen
so.
them give businesses lines of credit, because some businesses require a line of credit to operate, and I've seen them just call them back arbitrarily and say, well, we're calling your loan, you have to pay it back, or you're gonna default and whatever. So don't go to Chase
Yeah,
and try to get a small business.
I like credit unions anyways, in general.
They like
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
The question, if you didn't hear it, was, are credit unions more forthcoming with funds than other kinds of commercial banks? And my answer was, since they're hyper local, they might be more willing to lend money than a regional bank or even a multi-branch local bank. So, and banks have different appetites. On Monday, they could want to lend money to restaurants, and then 2 weeks from now, they've reached their capacity for that kind of risk, and they say, "I'm sorry, we can't help you." So do you really need a business plan? Yes, because banks require them. The most important thing to do, for the reason to do a business plan when you're starting a business, is to determine whether your idea is feasible, because ultimately you're the one taking the risk. So it's a lot less expensive to fail on paper than it is to do it in real life. And it's a lot easier to change your plan on paper than it is to do it in midstream once you open the doors, because you're already either losing money or whatever. So when I work with startups, which is most of what we do, it's let's see if your idea is feasible. Based on what they come to the table with, if it turns out that it's not feasible for whatever reason, doesn't mean you don't move ahead. It means you adapt your plan, turn it into something that's more workable. So the first reason to do a business plan is feasibility, other than the fact that it's required by banks. And if somebody came to me and said, "Do you want to invest $50,000 in my business?" I would want to see their business plan. So last night I went to the Hudson Valley. It's a Hudson Valley mentor program for entrepreneurs, and there were 6 different pitches, 5-minute pitches for businesses. And I left there thinking that wasn't enough information for me to decide if I was an angel investor, whether I would invest in it. So a business plan is a lot more detailed than what would be considered a pitch or a deck. That's terminology these days.
Like
A deck.
Shark Tank. How Shark Tank
I
operates.
love that show.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Shark Tank is great. But after they say that they're going to lend the money, there's a lot of due diligence that happens after the fact to determine whether they actually want to give them that $1 million. So a business plan is a little bit more detailed than that. So number one is determine your feasibility. It's required by banks and investors. There's a written part and there's a financial part. The written part are basically just footnotes to the financial. So if you do a financial projection, which will be required for a business plan, which is a profit and loss, a cash flow statement, don't get scared. I'm talking about accounting.
That's my wheelhouse.
Huh?
I said that's my wheelhouse. I love all that.
Okay,
Yeah.
a profit and loss, a cash flow statement, and a balance sheet.
Yeah.
If you say that you're going to do $500,000 worth of sales in your first year, then your business plan, the written part, is going to show how you're going to do that.
Yeah.
So imagine when you put your plan together for your restaurant or your food truck or whatever people are interested in doing by taking this track of courses, is if you think you can do that much business, you're going to have to justify it with words. You're going to have to find the lowest common denominators of some formula that says you're going to have 25 customers a day, and they're each going to buy $30 worth of food, and you're going to be open 6 days a week, and on Saturday you're going to do twice as much business, And all of that ultimately is easy in quotes, to translate into a number so that you can justify what you have in your financials. So the narrative portion is describing also what you're going to use the money that you're borrowing or investing. What are you going to use it for? And you're putting a financial model together that's going to be descriptive of your business and how it generates cash flow. We can also help at the SBDC with getting marketing information, demographic information, market information locally. There's lots of information there that we can hone down into something that's useful that will help you make a good business decision. And we can help you analyze the strengths and weaknesses of your plan because we've seen it all. At least I have over 20 years. So I don't let people out of my office if I think, well, I'll let them out of my office. I'm not living there now. But I do not encourage people to move ahead until I've done everything I can to make sure that they're making a good business decision, because I can't sleep at night if I haven't imparted my experience with them to make sure they're making a good business decision. And then ultimately they're the ones that are taking the risk, not me. So that's my responsibility. And the last question I ask people when they walk out the door is, are you going to be happy? Because if you don't wake up in the morning happy, there's no point in doing it. You can't make, there's not enough money in the world to wake up in the morning and be miserable if you have your own business. So if you're going to start a business, make sure you have a passion for it, and make sure that you're willing to take all the risks and to do all the hard work, and that it's going to bring you joy. Because if it doesn't bring you joy, you might as well keep your job and have somebody deposit money in your bank account every 2 weeks. I mean, I had my own business for 20 years. It was hard work. I wasn't really happy during those 20 years. I supported my family and whatever. But now, for the past 20 years, magically every 2 weeks, somebody puts money in my bank account, and they pay for my retirement and my health insurance. So, for me, it was the other way around.
What was the business, if you don't mind me asking?
None of your business. I had a marketing company. I was also involved in a few internet startups back at the beginning.
Gotcha.
A lot of travel. I spent more time at 35,000 feet than I did with my feet on the ground, traveling all over the country. So, which traveling on business is not fun.
No.
So that's why you need a business plan. It's all, as it says in the picture, it's your path to success, hopefully. I should have put a question mark there instead of an exclamation point. If you're going to borrow money, these are the things that are considered by banks or credit unions. How much cash you have to bring to the table, which is going to be your working capital. In other words, you have to pay the rent whether you break even or not. If nobody comes to the door of your business for a month, you still have to pay the rent and the electric bill. So you have to have what's called working capital in the bank to open the door. So they're going to look to see how much cash you bring to the table. They're going to make sure that they believe that you have the character to carry out the plan. They're going to look at your resume and your background to see if they think that you have the either the relevant experience or have other people who can help you with relevant experience to move the business forward. They're going to look at the financials to see if they really think that it has the capacity to generate enough cash flow to sustain itself. This brings up an important point. When you're doing the financials to start a business, if you're giving up your day job and you're making $40,000 a year, that's not a variable expense. You can't wait for that to fall to the bottom line as profit to pay your mortgage. That's a fixed expense. So when you're figuring out how much cash flow you need in order to open the doors, that becomes a fixed expense if you're giving up your day job. The capacity of the business to sustain itself is also its ability to sustain the owners if they're giving up their jobs. Collateral are the physical things that a bank can sink their teeth into in order to secure a loan. Very often it's a building. Sometimes they'll put, if you own a house, they'll put a lien on your house for three years or 5 years, and if you're paying back regularly, then they'll take that lien off. But Every small business owner signs a personal guarantee when they start a business. No such thing as just saying, oh, well, it didn't work out, bye, not gonna pay it back. It doesn't work that way. Sometimes it's more efficient for somebody to take out a home equity loan to start their business than to get a commercial loan, because number one, the terms are better, because usually they're 25 or 30-year loans, which means your payments are going to be less. If you took the commercial loan, you'd have a lien on your house anyway. And if your bank went in the toilet, if your business went in the toilet, you probably have to take out a home equity loan to pay off the bank anyway. So depending on the situation and how much money they need to borrow, you know, if somebody has a $600,000 house and all they owe is $50,000, it probably pays to finance it yourself if you don't need $500,000 then. And then if you pay it down, if your business is successful, you have your own line of credit that you can use, you know, over time. Anyway, that happens. So collateral is important. And again, you'll be signing a personal guarantee, so your personal credit is important. These days, if your credit score is 650 or below, then you're not going to get a commercial loan. Better to be in the 700s. They changed the numbers over the years. It used to be, you know, 600s. Now it's the 700s, and I think 800 something is a perfect credit score. I'm not quite sure. 850.
Nobody.
You can run the class if you want. No, I'm just.
Oh, no. That's good. I just thought.
I know. But your personal credit is important. And then conditions. What are the general economic conditions that would either be for or against you starting your business? All we've heard for the past year and a half is recession, recession, recession. I haven't seen it happen yet. The job numbers are good. Interest rates are higher, that's for sure, but that's slowing down inflation, which is a good thing. So, but general economic conditions in the country and in the region and locally where you're going to start your business is going to help determine whether a bank is willing to lend you money. So, this is the 6 C's of credit that are kind of ubiquitous to every bank that makes a lending decision. I'm going to take a sip of water. So we have a workbook that we use with all of our clients. These are the sections in it. It really helps you hone in on what's really important in a business plan. I had one client years ago who brought me a 90-page business plan that was put together by somebody on Wall Street. They paid $5,000 for it. I read it. Had a lot of pictures. Okay. It had a lot of pictures, and it was more like an advertising piece. None of it made any sense. It was worthless as a business plan. I tried to get in touch with the guy to tell him he was a crook, but he disappeared. So basically took their money and whatever. So I took whatever the business plan. Sounds familiar?
Oh, I'm sorry, that was his business plan.
That was his business plan, is to get other people's money to put business plans together. Even the color copies were terrible. I couldn't believe it. So I took these ladies' plan and we talked about what they wanted to do. They wanted to buy an old summer camp and turn it into a camp for young girls for the arts and stuff like that. When I was done, they had a 12-page business plan, which they submitted to a lending institution, and they were approved. Now, ultimately, they were their own worst enemy, and they were also taken advantage of by contractors, and they never got the doors open. But their business plan, and they were a little bit, but that's beside the point. But the plan we put together was enough for them to get funding, and instead of 90 pages, it was 12 pages. So it's not quantity, it's having the appropriate information for whatever you want to do. Now, if you're in a highly technical business, which opening a restaurant or a food truck or whatever is not, then you don't need to have an elaborate business plan. You just have to have the appropriate information. So these are the, oh, we got a hand up. Give me a second, Audrey.
Okay.
How do I think you're unmuted, Audrey.
Yeah, she's already.
I am. So I just had a question about the business plan workbook. What is the title of it? And would we be able to obtain a copy of the book?
Well, if you were here, I bought about 25 copies of it. But since you're not, I will have your email address and I will send you one.
Okay, so it's a digital workbook.
Well, it's not digital, it's a document, but I can send you a copy so you can. Yes, it's a digital version of
Of the physical.
a physical document.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So I can send it to you. And I'll
But-
also be sending out this presentation for anybody who wants it as well.
Okay, thank you. But do you have the physical? You said you have the physical books, right?
Yeah, I have it here, but you're not here, so.
All right.
Yeah.
No, that's okay. I live in Kingston. Would I be able to pick one up at the office in Kingston?
Oh, sure. You could stop.
Okay.
We're at the address is at the beginning. We're across from the hospital.
Yes.
So you know where we are. So you can stop in anytime and somebody will give you one. If I'm not there, then there's always somebody there.
Okay, thank you so much.
But you'll have my email address. It's at the beginning of the presentation, so you should probably jot it down and send me an email and make sure that somebody is there before you pop over.
Okay,
Maybe lunch because we get hungry.
thank you.
All right. So these are the sections that are typical. What's this? The answer is yes. I will leave a bunch of them here at the library. So these are the typical sections. Not every business plan is the same. There are other workbooks out there. There are horrible online business plan putting together software that you can get. Some of them are okay. Some of them overcomplicated and make it difficult for somebody who's never done it before. I mean, obviously, I like the way that I teach people how to do it because I've been doing it for a long time, but I like to keep things simple so that people don't get overwhelmed. So these are the different sections. Oh, it's not rocket science. It really isn't. For the most part, it's not rocket science. I couldn't figure out why I had that there until I remembered that I had to read it. But it's really not rocket science to put a business plan together. Because if you don't have the knowledge to jot it down, then you got a lot to learn before you start to open up your business. And that's why I have a job. So, statement of purpose, first section. Basically, this is a summary of everything that you need to, everything that you need to know in order to put your plan together. So your business has to have a name. Name is very important. Name recognition is really important when you start a business. If you name your business Sally's Restaurant, it's easy to remember Sally's. It's not easy to remember a 6-word phrase in Italian for an Italian restaurant. So you want to keep your name relevant. If you can have a name that's relevant to the kind of business that you have, that's fine. But you want to make it easy to remember so that people don't have to think, especially when you get to be my age, remember what the name of the restaurant is. You have to discuss who the owners are. Again, anyone who owns 20% or more of the business is responsible for all its activities and will also be signing a personal guarantee if there's more than one owner. You're going to state how much money you need to get the doors open. And that isn't only what you're borrowing the money for, but it's also that working capital number I've been talking about. You're going to describe how much money you're bringing to the table if you're borrowing. You'll write which bank or lending institution you're borrowing the money from, or credit union or whatever. You're going to state in simple terms what you're going to use the money for. And there's an example on the right of a sources and uses statement. So in this case, the owner is investing $200,000. They're getting a loan for $300,000, and they have $500,000 to start the business. And then the use of funds is what they're going to spend the money on. And the working capital number is how much money they're going to have at the bank when they open the doors. Probably not enough, but it is what it is. and you'll describe how you're going to repay your loan. 99.9% of the time, it's from the cash flow of the business. Some businesses have different rounds of funding. So you'll have a Series A, a Series B, and Series B will take out Series A, but that's usually more, high-tech businesses that have these different series of funding. So usually it's from the cash flow of the business. And if you're buying a building or you have equipment, that serves as collateral. So basically, this summarizes everything you want to do. If a bank doesn't get past the first page, you're not going to get any money. Then you have to describe your business. I discussed this before. How are you going to generate cash flow? So a restaurant is a retail business. So basic information: what days of the week you open, what are your hours? Okay. If you have a menu, what is the average check? How much is somebody going to spend when they come to your restaurant? So tomorrow or next week, when Jean is here, she was a restaurant owner, so she'll be more specific about that. But the description of your business is describing how you're going to make money, because that's going to support your financials. And again, it doesn't have to be complicated. That's not complicated math. You need to know about the regulations that you have to live by for different kinds of businesses. Not every business has to live by regulations. If you're in the food business, there's lots of regulations. I think the third session here is a person from the health department.
Oh, yeah.
And then the one after that is from Cornell, called Cornell, who can tell you all about food processing and stuff like that. Because there's lots of rules you have to live by with food processing, so you don't kill anybody.
Yeah.
So
That'd be bad.
location is important. Where you're going to put your business. Sometimes location isn't important. If you have, a woodworking business, it doesn't matter if you're in the middle of the woods unless you have a showroom. If you have a showroom, you want it easily accessible for people. What other businesses are nearby? Other businesses attract people. So if they're coming to go to another business, they, oh, there's another restaurant across the street. I've never tried that before. And they come in. And then if you're nice to them, they'll come in another time. Parking is critical for a retail business. If people can't park, they're going to just ride around the block and then they're going to go to McDonald's because it's easy to park there. Traffic patterns and traffic flow. If you're on a state route, you can easily get the number of cars that go by on a daily basis. They measure the traffic on state routes every 3 years. There's a little utility that you could go to where it has a map. It's fun to use. You can drill down to the road, in the section of road, and it gives you the average daily traffic that goes by. Theory is if there's more eyes that see your business, then there's the higher the probability that somebody's going to stop asking. So traffic is important for some business, not every. If you're a business that requires deliveries from big trucks, then you want to be accessible to the major transportation routes because you want to make it easy for them to get to you and for you to ship things out. If you're a manufacturing company that ships out big tractor trailer loads full of stuff, you want to be as close to major transportation as possible. Since a lot of the money that people borrow from banks is to fix up a place or buy a building, then the bank is going to want a floor plan, or they're going to want a construction document with all of the information on what you're going to be spending their money on. Okay, so it depends on how complicated it is, but you're definitely going to need to have written estimates for everything you're going to do for that location, whether you're buying it, renting it, or whatever. Everything has to be in writing. My two favorite words for business plan and what keeps the number of pages down that you write is see attached. So you don't have to rewrite the construction plan. You just have to attach it, and you can summarize it in a few sentences. So supporting documentation is critical to a good business plan. It's required, and it makes your life easier because you don't have to keep restating things over and over again. If you have a lease, obviously you'll be attaching your lease. If you're taking out a 15-year loan, then you want to make sure that you can at least renew your lease for 15 years, because if you get thrown out of the space, you won't be able to pay the bank back. So make sure that if you're going to sign a lease, that it has the appropriate terms, and that it at least covers the amount of time that you're trying to borrow money for. And if you're buying a business, then you have to have a contract of sale. If you're buying a building, you have to have a contract of sale. If you've already put down a deposit, that goes towards your equity contribution. So, but again, that's another piece of paper that you would want to attach to your business plan. So again, everything has to have written estimates for improvements or renovations. If you're renting, it's called an improvement. If you're buying, it's called a renovation. It's just terminology. You want to have a list of all the permits required to operate. You might not have them all, but at least you'll have a list of what you have to get apply for. You're not going to get to the closing table until the bank is reasonably assured that you're going to get those permits. If you're going to open up a restaurant and serve wine and beer, or wine, beer, and alcohol, then you have to apply to the liquor authority. That's kind of a little bit of a catch-22, because you kind of have to have the space before they'll issue you the license. But you know, that's something that you have to have in place, because if you have a food establishment, your beverage is where a lot of the profit is. So if all of a sudden you can't sell beer and wine or liquor, then your profitability is going to go. So the next time you buy a cocktail for $18, you can know that that's why the restaurant that you're eating in is still in business. But after the second one, it doesn't matter anyway. So there you go. Everything is very expensive now. As I told Ellen, my daughter has a restaurant. Everything. I mean, eggs at one point were 5 times more expensive than they were, you know, pre-COVID. And you know, when you have a cafe and you're serving egg sandwiches in the morning, you have to raise your prices. You have no choice. But everything is very expensive now. So if you can charge $18 for a cocktail, do it. You know. Well, you do what you have to do within reason. So knowing what kind of permits and everything is important. If you have a service business, then your physical location isn't that important, but the service area that you're going to serve is what's important. If you are, I don't know exactly what you want to do, but if you fix computers and cell phones, somebody isn't going to drive 50 miles to come to your store, because there's probably somebody someplace closer that they can go to. So what is that sweet spot? What is that circle that you can draw around your business? What are the demographics in that circle? You know, so your service area also, even if you're opening up a restaurant or a food establishment, how far is somebody willing to drive to actually come to your restaurant? They're not going to, unless you're one of these famous restaurants, Stone something. It's a famous Blue Hill Farm, which I would love to go to one day, but it's, you know, 75 miles from my house. You know, so that's a destination restaurant. So if you want to build a destination restaurant, you better have a lot of tweezers.
We're doing like a food truck. That's where food trucks come in.
Well, food trucks also have to have the ability to set up at an appropriate location.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So that's something that Jean will describe in the next session, because she's an expert. I'm not on that anyway. Market analysis. Again, you draw a circle around your business. What are the demographics? First of all, what does your industry look like at this point in time? What are the current trends? People don't cook lobster thermidor anymore. In 1957, if you went to a restaurant and they didn't have lobster thermidor, then you'd probably go out of business. Or lobster Newburgh, which is like lobster and a heavy cheese sauce or whatever. It's horrible. I don't know if people ever ate it. But you know, what are the trends in the business now? You know, everything now is, and it's even less now, but it's farm to table. Well, obviously the carrot on your plate came from a farm and they put it on a table. So isn't that farm to table? I guess it is. But you know, farm to table is a trend. You know, organic. What are the current trends in the industry that you want to be either on the leading edge of, or maybe you'll be a leader. Maybe you'll start selling lobster thermidor again, and everybody will follow suit. And all of a sudden, you'll be able back in 1957. But anyway, you want to know what's going on in your industry. You want to gather as many demographic points of information that you can. Again, as a client of the SBDC, we can help you get a lot of this information. Some of it is stale because it doesn't come out, like if you look at the census data, it's pre-COVID, but there's other kinds of information that's more current that we can get that you'd have some difficulty getting on your own. So you want to make sure that when you open the doors, that there's going to be customers coming through the door. So you want to do some market analysis. Minimally, a bank is going to want to know that you've done your due diligence. So even if you cut and paste 5 paragraphs from the internet and you actually read them or paraphrase them, at least they see that you've done some sort of due diligence to determine, to support your business plan. Become an expert. If you're an expert on your business, you're going to increase the probability that you're going to be successful. So there are trade organizations that you can join. Some are good, some aren't so good. They exist for the benefit of their constituents. So if it's a good one, they have a lot of information, and they also have a lot of members that can share information. Get in your car and visit other businesses that are similar. See what they do. See what you perceive as making them have a line out the door, every day for people to come and partake of whatever it is they have to offer. Well, magazines, everything is online now, but trade publications, magazines, e-zines, I'll call them e-zines to be more current, but any kind of information that you can read. You can take some stuff with a grain of salt. Some of it might just resonate with you, and you can bring it into whatever your plan is. Take a course. That's why hopefully some of you are here to learn the basics of putting a business plan together. There's lots of free information out there. There are courses that you can take that you have to pay for, but if you invest money in yourself, then you're going to increase your probability of being successful. So a $300 or $400 course is probably worth it if you're going to open up a business that's going to be doing $500,000 a year. And if you don't have $300 to spend on a course, you probably shouldn't be opening up a restaurant, because you probably don't have enough money to invest in your own. So, and I don't recommend starting a business on credit cards, although on TV they say, oh, I started my business on my credit cards and became a billionaire. Probably not a good roadmap to success. So market analysis is important. Justify to yourself it's a good idea to run a business. Justify to a lender or an investor that it's a good idea to open up your business. And become an expert on what you want to do. Or hire experts. One of the biggest lessons I had to learn when I had to start educating people, because when you're young, you think you know everything. But when I first started doing this job, I found out that I didn't know everything. And it was irresponsible for me to make believe that I knew everything, because people were making life-changing decisions based on what I was teaching. So, I asked questions. Now I know about just about everything, but I've been doing this for 20 years. So it's, well, not everything. Just ask my wife. I don't know anything. Who's your competition? There is not a business in the world that doesn't have competition. Okay. They could be 5 minutes away. They could be 5 miles away. But there's some businesses doing something similar to what you're doing. So you want to know as much about them as you can. So if you want to open up a restaurant, spend some time eating out. Okay. Model yourself out of people who are doing a good job, because there's nothing wrong with copying success. If somebody's doing a bad job, or they have servers that throw food on the table and don't say how are you and treat you like garbage, that's not the kind of establishment you want. The personal relationships that develop between customers and the people who are serving them, is as important as the quality of the food and the prices and everything else. So I will pay 50 cents more for a cup of coffee in the morning for a place where they know me and they say, how are you? And they have a personal interest in the fact that I come in there 3 or 4 times a week, which I do to one of my clients every morning. And it's a good way to ground me, feeling like I'm someplace that makes me feel comfortable. So, and my daughter who owns a cafe, everybody loves her. So, and I'm usually standing outside with a shotgun. But everybody loves her, and that's one of the reasons why she's been successful. Other than the fact that she's a good cook, but that's besides the point. Well, it isn't really. Plus, I get a free breakfast every morning, so it could be better.
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, who's your competition? That you can see there's a little matrix there where the example in the workbook is a bike store. So they went out and they evaluated their competition on a 1 to 10 basis. And somebody with a high score was somebody who's doing a really good job, which is somebody to emulate. And then somebody who's doing a crummy job got a low score, and they're going to be easy to get market share away from because you're going to do a better job. It's all about market share. If you draw a circle around your business, there's a limited number of customers in that circle.
Exactly.
So if you're opening up a restaurant in a sea of competitive businesses, then you're going to be taking business away from somebody else. So your job is to do that. It sounds ruthless, but it's true. Usually there's enough business to go around, but ultimately you're taking customers away from somebody else at some point in time. So again, there's nothing wrong with copying a successful formula, because basically there's nothing new under the sun. I mean, everything has been done and tried and whatever. So that's why the relationship and the people part of it is so important. At least it is to me, and it's what I try to impart on people I'm helping with their startup plans. So in Marketing 101 in college, they call it SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Competitors have strengths, which are threats to your success, and they have weaknesses, which are opportunities to capitalize on. So that's the important. Again, doing a business plan, an investor, a banker looking at this, if you give them the impression that you think your business exists in a vacuum, it doesn't. But knowing your competition will help you make a lot of decisions in terms of pricing, menu choices, a whole bunch of things that you can either do like or diverge from your competitors in order to be successful. So you can't charge twice as much for something unless it has a really high perceived value. Like, who needs a Mercedes? Okay, I mean, it has a high perceived value. Do you have a Mercedes?
No.
How about you? Anybody? Okay, you don't really need a Mercedes. And basically, you don't even turn the key anymore. You press the button, it turns on, it gets you from point A to point B. Okay, they're making a lot of money when you buy one of those things. It's very profitable because it has a high perceived value. So if you have a cocktail that you can sell for $25, okay, because it has a high perceived value, it probably still only has an ounce of vodka in it, some fruit juice. So, you know, perceived value is an important thing to. Well, so goodbye to those glasses. Ladies, I dropped my glasses, but that's because I got so excited. They probably fell asleep already. Anyway, so your competition is important to analyze. You have to have a marketing strategy. Marketing, again, is the most important function a business has. If you don't do marketing, you don't get customers. Now, certainly a lot of marketing for any kind of business now is through social media. A lot of it is free, but not all of it is free. So if you need to boost your ads on Facebook during a particular point in time, or if you're having a promotion, you have to have a budget for it. So when you're putting your business plan together, you want a budget for marketing. Some print advertising over the years has tended to be ineffective because people would put an ad in a newspaper one time and they would expect their business to explode. It doesn't work that way. Okay. Sometimes a billboard can be effective. Where I live in Woodstock, you know, you've got a major road that goes into that part of the Catskills, and there's billboards on either side because a lot of people come and they don't know what's available in the area. So that might be a good investment there. But, you know, there's other places where again, I use that example where you'd invest in a billboard and it would have no effect. Or you do it once and it's there for a month and it disappears. So when you're doing your business plan, you want to put a plan together of what you're going to do. You're going to spend more money when you open the doors of a startup than you are 5 years down the road when you've already got an established clientele. So figure out what you're going to do. Be creative. It's still the two things that I forgot the second. I don't remember the first one. Sex and humor, the two things that sell product the best. Okay, either it's implied or it's surreptitiously there when you watch television ads or whatever. But those are the two things that sell merchandise. Those are the two most important things. So make your business. If you can open up a hot dog stand and make it sexy, go for it. That's what you want to do because that's what people are going to remember. If you make people laugh, which releases endorphins, then they'll remember what released those endorphins when they see your advertisement. I'm going to pick my glasses. After release, I could drop them again. And certainly developing relationships with other business people. Some chambers of commerce are actually worth joining. Some aren't. I know where I live, Ulster Chamber has hundreds and hundreds of members. I think it's the breakfast and the occasional dinners that drive people there, but everybody knows everybody and they all do business together. So you want to reaching out to other people is also a good marketing strategy. Most important decision you're going to make when you start a business is who you hire. If you're lucky enough to find somebody these days, it's literally impossible to find people to work.
Yeah.
I don't know where they all went. It used to be if you had a
side hustles, like the gig economy. That's where they probably.
Well, yeah, but if you could make $16 an hour, I mean, I can only use my daughter's restaurant as an example. She used to put a job out for counter help, and people would make in her establishment with tips, people make $25, $26 an hour. Okay, and she would have 12 people apply for the jobs, and probably 8 of them would show up, and then she'd find one of the 8 that was worth hiring or that she wanted to hire. But people would apply for the jobs. Now it's like crickets. Nobody even applies. Or they'll say they're coming for an interview and they don't show up. Or they get hired and they don't come up on their first day of work.
Because it's an employee, it's shifted to where employees have like more opportunities. Because there's a lot of places that are hiring. So they have more of an opportunity to like apply other places or have like, the gig economy to supplement,
But they're not applying for the jobs. Unless you know something I don't know. I work in workforce development and I have,
especially like in certain retail businesses and like, because the way the economy is that there's like a lot of people consistently have like no hiring. A lot of people, well, especially like a retail, like fast food and stuff like that. A lot of people that work for those like type of businesses, they tend to not stay there long because they don't have to like put up with employers that are like treating them badly. Like before,
Yeah, but those people who had those jobs needed to make money. In
money,
order to buy groceries and pay their rent.
Exactly.
And I mean,
so that's what I'm saying. Like they're finding other ways to supplement that.
Yeah, but even that's saturated now. There's just so much
true.
money you can make delivering for Uber
or
driving an Uber. You're not making the same amount of money that you would if you had a steady job making $50, $60 an hour because you never know.
Yeah, that's true.
So gig economy is part of it. But there's a lot of, certainly the workforce has always been stratified, but there was a certain strata of people that would take jobs like working for my daughter or whatever, or a restaurant or fast food or in hotels for that matter. They disappeared. Don't know where they went.
Airbnb is kind of screwed.
Yeah, well, whatever. So anyway, but the most important thing that you're going to do is hire people because they're the ones that are going to execute your plan other than you. So they better be nice. You better get along with them, and they better have the right experience in order to carry out your plan. So, and they're also, if you look at your financials, when you finally put a financial projection together, it's going to be the biggest item on your financials, because people are expensive. You have to pay them X number of dollars an hour, and then you have a certain number of people, and then you have your payroll taxes, and your workman's compensation, and before you know it, people are going to be the most important, most expensive thing on your menu of expenses typically. Your business plan will require, as the business owner, your resume or a good paragraph or two about what your experience is. Your experience is going to be really important in terms of a decision of whether to lend you money or an investor to invest in your business. So either put your resume together and be prepared to attach it, or write a paragraph about what you're going to do. And then also you want to enumerate what your responsibilities are going to be to run the business. And if there are other positions that will take over some of the other important responsibilities, then those people become critical to describe what those responsibilities are, what the position is, what you're going to pay people. And then if it's hourly wages, hourly workers below that, then you're going to have, 10 servers, and they're all going to make $12 an hour plus tips or whatever the minimum is. You're going to have three sous chefs and one chef and whatever. But you're going to find that that's the most expensive thing that you have to take into account. And then there's the other professionals that people sometimes have to hire, like accountants, probably to do the tax returns for business these days is at least going to be like $1,000 or $1,200 at the end of the year. If you're lucky enough to find an accountant who's willing to take you on, that's another thing. You go to an accountant, you say, "Can you do my tax return?" "Sorry, we're booked up."
Yeah, that happened to me actually.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
We
I
can't
went to
take
go-
you
I
on.
went
We
to
have
go
too many
with it.
clients. You
Yeah.
go to an attorney.
I got
You want to buy a building? You want a real estate attorney? "Sorry, I can't help you." Never happened before.
Yeah.
So maybe you should go to law school instead.
Yeah.
But so if there are other professionals that you're going to hire or other people who helped you put the business plan together, very often people will put my name in there, and then then the banks just throw it across the room and say, "This guy's nuts." But the fact that they've come to the SBDC for the expertise is a good thing, and any other consultants to help start the business is fine. I mean, I've been doing this a long time, so a lot of people know. So, and they know that I
I was gonna
prepare.
say, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
No, it's a good thing, because I prepare people appropriately to take risks.
It's kind of a joke.
If I prepared them appropriately, or the other people in my office, I'm not the only one, then when they get to the point where they're making their applications or whatever, they know that they've crossed all their T's and dotted all their I's. Doesn't necessarily mean they're going to get a loan, but at least, they're, at least what is presented to the lender or the investor, their eyes aren't rolling back in their head because they don't know what the hell they're talking about. So that's the most important sections in the business plan. It doesn't have to get more complicated than that. I will leave copies of that here at the library, and I will send them to anybody who wants it. So my email address is at the beginning of the presentation here, and I will go back to the first slide before I leave, so you can jot down my email address. And you're also welcome to contact me or my office to set up a one-on-one appointment with anybody if you decide that that's excuse me, if you decide that that's a route that you want to take. Short and long-term goals. What do you think the short-term goal is? Well, it's to break even. It's to be generating enough cash flow to sustain the business. And if your owner's compensation, so you can buy groceries and pay your mortgage as part of those fixed expenses, and that's your break-even point, you have to get to that point. Either that, or you're going to have more, invest more money in your business, or borrow more money, which is kind of tough when you're a startup. So you want to put a lot of work into putting your financial plan together, determining when you're going to open, et cetera, so that you get to that break-even point as quickly as possible, because then the business becomes self-sustaining. Okay, it's like if you light a charcoal fire on your grill with charcoal lighter, eventually the fire has to stay burning by itself when the charcoal lighter evaporates. So it's the same thing with the business. I just thought of that analogy. It's the first time I ever used that.
That's good.
But it is barbecue season. So
Oh, yeah, so, yeah.
that is, of course, if you don't have a cast room, then
Yeah,
then
that's
it's a different story altogether. Your first goal is to break even. How much business you're going to have to do and how long it's going to take. It's not a bad idea to have goals. When we work on a business plan, the projection part of it is 5 years. So if you think your business is going to, if you want your business to grow, you can put a growth factor into your sales. And then you can also look at the expenses and see what other expenses are going to increase over time. If the business is going to double, you're probably going to have to hire more people, right? Obviously, your variable costs like food and alcohol and things like that are going to go up proportionally to the amount of business that you do. But you have to look at the expenses to see what's going to go up and what's going to stay the same. The things that stay the same and if profitability goes up, that's called economies of scale. Okay. So, but you're not looking, certainly an investor or a banker is not looking at 1 year, they're looking at 5 years at least, or 3 to 5 years to see that the business can sustain itself for that period of time. Because that's usually the go or no point for business is 3 years. If you don't make it for past the first 3 years, you're probably not going to make it for the second 3 years. I like to do a 5-year projection with my clients. So I think it's a more meaningful period of time. So hopefully at the end of the road, you'll have that private island in the Bahamas. If not, nothing ventured, nothing gained. If you're a risk taker, you always have to plan on the upside and be willing to accept the fact that there's a downside. Also, when people are investing their own money in starting a business or in somebody else's business, I always tell them to make sure that they can afford the downside, because the last thing you want to do is end up living in your car. Okay, so the more thought and planning you put on the front end, the higher the probability you're going to be successful on the back. Or maybe just not make enough money to make it worthwhile and you decide to sell your business or just go and get a job. So again, things to include attachments. You'll have to fill out a personal financial statement. It's not a bad idea to put together a personal balance sheet of what you own and what you owe. Even your clothes and your furniture is worth money, although the bank is not going to come and take it if you don't pay your loan back. They very often will not take your house either. Okay, so the last resort in any bad situation is personal bankruptcy, which I don't recommend. But that's like the last straw. But that would not absolve you of the personal guarantee you signed during your business loan. You still owe that money, so you'd have to work somehow with the bank over time. Probably, if you're buying a business, you need their tax returns for the past 3 years, and that becomes the basis for a projection moving forward. Is the history of the business. You'll probably have to provide your personal tax returns for at least 1 or 2 years. Pictures, diagrams, labels, trademarks, patents, anything like that that can support your business proposition is a great thing to attach your business plan. Not a bad idea, to have a logo or something that identifies your business. You have to trademark it. I wouldn't bother. It probably doesn't make any difference if somebody's copying your logo, then you got there first. It's expensive to hire a trademark attorney and all that. So, and unless you're, same thing with patents and stuff like that, is that if you don't have the money to enforce it, because it's very expensive to enforce a patent, because you have to hire a patent attorney, and the probability that you're going to end up being successful in court is probably 10 years down the road. So you will have spent $500 an hour on an attorney for 5 years, and then hopefully get a return on that. So you have to weigh your ability to enforce something like that too. But anyway, if you have a logo or whatever, take a picture of it. If you're in the restaurant business, it's not a bad idea to put your menu down, because if you think that you're going to make $500,000 in the first year and your average sale is $6, it's going to take an awful lot of hot dogs to get to $500,000 worth of sales. So a menu uh, pictures of the front of your store or whatever. So, not going to go over this in detail, but the left is a profit and loss. The middle is a cash flow statement. Profit and loss are the ongoing activities of the business, and whatever's left is profit. Cash flow is how much money you have in the bank. So here's the example. You borrow $100,000. You spend $50,000 on equipment. How much money is left in the bank? $50,000. Did you earn that by selling hot dogs? No, you didn't. But it's money that's available to operate the business. So your cash flow is the most important thing. Okay. If you run out of dollars, you can't operate the business. And then a balance sheet is what you own and what you owe.
Assets and liabilities.
This is my favorite acronym. CFIM ITYM. It means cash flow is more important than your mother. Don't forget that. If you run out of money, you're going to go out of business. I'll be tested on that. And I made it up too.
That's a good password.
But there's other acronyms. I might have used it right. ROI, you'll hear these things go by, return on investment. If you have an investor, they want to make 50% and they want their money back in 5 years. That's called return on investment. I have a spreadsheet that will calculate that if you're interested. URL, you all know what that is when you're on the internet. It means Uniform Resource Locator. EIN is your employer identification number, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. I hate acronyms. I sit through presentations from people and they start spouting acronyms. Our state director, because we have a person who's responsible for the whole state, she spits them out and I say, you better stop spitting those out because I know what you're talking about. Okay, so acronyms, it's a good idea to understand the vernacular of business. So in the back of our workbook, there's a whole bunch of terms or whatever, and I say you will not be tested with multiple choice, but you will be asked to do essay questions. So, but, you want to be familiar with the terminology of the business that you're in. And ultimately, when you do financial projections, you end up with 12-month numbers because businesses run by the month. They don't run by the year.
Yeah.
If you don't look at your financials for a whole year, not a good thing. So ultimately, you end up with numbers that you could look at by the month. And whatever accounting package you use or whatever, you should be able to punch a button and have a report on your desk whenever you want it, whether it's every week, every month, and you should know how to use it. And whatever kind of software you use to run your business, make sure you're comfortable using it, because if you're not going to use it. So that's it. Anybody out there have any more questions? You're going to all be unflipped.
I'm good.
You're good?
Yeah.
All right. There's my email address. It's probably available through the library here too if you need it. I'm going to leave some business plan workbooks here if anybody wants them, and a few of my business cards. But if you want any of this information, if you want me to send you a copy of this presentation, I'm happy to do it. And we're also always happy to have you people as clients if you want. It's very hard to impart all of this in such a short period of time. I did the best I could. So I encourage you to take the rest of the modules because they're a little bit more specific than just how to write a business plan. And at the end, there's going to be a round table where hopefully some business owners will be here and can exchange ideas or whatever. And we were discussing maybe having some food here on that last thing, but I don't know whether that'll happen.
Yeah.
But we can always hope. You won't see me again until somebody chats.
Oh.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. So anyway, that's what I got. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great.
That was very good. Thank you for doing it, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.